the idyllic villages that cling to our coastline. Known for their beauty and serenity.
Wow, look at this, just incredible.
Now destinations for our leisure.
This is like exploring a jungle.
But once they played a vital role in our history.
That's got to be the Lost Village. I'm Ben Robinson, and as an archaeologist, I'm fascinated by coastal villages. I want to explore them, discover their history, unearth some surprising things about their past.
I've come to Solva in southwest Wales. The village is built around a tidal harbour that lies on St Bride's Bay in North Pembrokeshire.
By the early 1800s, Solva was a bustling seaport, helping to feed places far and wide. I can imagine the tremendous heat that would have been generated here.
I'll uncover what fuelled its success.
I couldn't help noticing the remains of the lime kiln. It's got a pond in the top of it. And some fish. And fish as well.
But the village was no stranger to disaster.
Eventually, the relief did come and got him, but he was unrecognisable. He was a gibbering wreck. It's no wonder that he went mad.
There's a fascinating story to this village by the sea.
The story of Solva centres on this naturally accessible harbour and the ingenuity of the villagers.
By the beginning of the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing. Populations were growing enormously, especially in the towns and cities. There were many more hungry mouths to feed, and staples, grains such as wheat, barley, oats, were in high demand. Solva was in the perfect position to answer the call. Solva is really a village of two halves. You've got Lower Solva down there in the bottom of the valley, right against the river and the road. And up there, overlooking the harbour, high on the hill, is Upper Solva. And quite a lot of later development with houses with lovely sea views.
The river runs down the valley through the village, and once it would have been part of daily life here.
Oh, these narrow passageways that go between properties are a real characteristic of Solva. They're called giddels, and it's where householders that didn't have access to the river could come down the steps here, come down the passageway and draw some water, perhaps for washing or cleaning, or even come down here and throw away their household waste and slops. Well, the river looks pretty clean today.
The village is covered in sea mist when I get my first look around.
This is the main street of Lower Solva. And the first thing that strikes you about this place is the vibrant colours of some of the houses. It's really a jolly little place. But I'm here to look at the history. It's all characteristic of a place that's really started to grow and develop in the 18th and 19th century.
I'm looking for clues to the industry that might have caused the village to prosper at this time.
As you'd expect on any thoroughfare, you've got shops, you've got pubs and inns, there's houses as well, but this looks somewhat different. It's a striking building and very tall, and possibly also this porch affair is later as well, because I can see a blocked opening. There we go. We've got this wide entrance, quite low now, but I suspect the ground level's been built up. And originally, you probably could have got a little pony, a horse and cart in there unloading goods. And you can even see these huge iron hinges either side. And I imagine big wooden gate leaves on there, great big door closing. It's a building that's clearly been modified, but it's very industrial. It looks like some kind of warehouse.
Carla Macready is the owner of the hair salon based on the ground floor.
What a wonderful building you've got
thank
here.
you. I love it. I'm very proud of it, yeah.
And what do you know about the history of it?
Well, it was an old merchant's building. There's an archway outside where the corn and the goods would be hauled in. So this floor that we're actually standing on now didn't used to exist. It would slope to the back cobbles that I've kept out the back.
I can see you've got some fantastic joists exposed here. They're close together and very big, so they're to take quite heavy loads on the floor above. Yeah, and I couldn't help but notice this, some form of hatch, presumably a trapdoor there originally.
Yeah, that would have been a trapdoor to haul things back and forth. And there's some carvings out of the beams just above you, which I don't know if that was because there was a pulley system or something there.
Ah, yes, because obviously what you don't want to be doing, if you can help it, is hauling heavy goods up and down stairs. So if you've got some kind of pulley system, you can winch up sacks of goods, and the carts would come right in here and you could just haul stuff up.
Carla's salon was in fact one of Solva's grain warehouses, dating from the 1800s.
Just walking back down the street towards the harbour, and I've noticed another one of these warehouse buildings. Again, that big arch there, now a window, but obviously a cart arch before then. Most villages in England, in Wales, Scotland, you might find a farm on the street, a barn or two, perhaps some stables, but not massive warehouses like this. This is something a bit different. There's clearly something else going on here.
Bella Prickett is the owner of the shop that now occupies the building, another villager conscious of caring for Solva's heritage.
On this floor, you can see the evidence in the floorboards that this would have been double doors. The hatch, you can see they're going in a different direction where they've been filled in at a later date.
So these lovely floorboards, original, running in this direction, but these ones running in this direction.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so a very wide hatch.
Come up again.
Oh, OK.
Up again, and you'll see exactly the same thing. So in the floorboards, you can see there's a different pattern here.
So it goes right up to the top. We're right in the roof here.
Yeah.
They're using every inch of space here to store goods.
Yeah, it's a granary. So the grain would have been up here, dropped down through 2 lots of trapdoors to sacks below, and carts there ready to take it off to wherever it was going to be transported to. Because it was a busy port, you know, the grain would have gone out via the sea. Even though it's a shop now, we call it the granary. You know, where shall I put these rugs? Take them up to the top floor of the granary.
Right.
So,
yeah.
These 2 remaining warehouses near the harbour show that Solva was storing grain for export in the 1700s. Yet the land around the village is not naturally great for growing grain.
Well, the first thing that strikes me about this landscape are these steep-sided valleys here. There's no way you could grow stuff up here. You just couldn't farm them. But if you go up onto the valley sides, onto the top there is flat land. And there's evidence of farming going back hundreds of years, even thousands of years.
I'm keen to examine the ground around here further.
I've got a map of the geology of the area here. It shows the underlying bedrock, and it's quite a mixed picture. We've got sandstones mixed with mudstones, and the sort of soils that I'm seeing here, this seems more acidic in nature. Now, the type of soil you've got is absolutely critical because it dictates what kind of crops are going to grow successfully. Now, I've got a hunch that these soils are very acid, just looking at the bedrock here. But I'm also going to do a little test to see if I'm right.
higher acidity in the soil means growing certain types of crops around Solva is near impossible.
Right, just taking a little bit of soil. Just digging to get a little bit of soil out of the bank here and put it in this pot. And this is just a garden acidity tester. So there we go, that's its natural state there, around 7 alkaline. If I put the probe in the soil that I've prepared there, whoa, look at that, it's swinging right over to the acid side. There's a handy guide here on the packet. It says the acid lovers are heathers, rhododendron and potatoes. Well, Pembrokeshire is potato growing country. But if I want to grow Brussels sprouts, cabbages, onions or cereals like wheat, I need to add lime and make the soil more alkaline.
The Romans discovered that heating limestone to extreme temperatures created quicklime, a powdery substance that could be used for building. But at the end of the medieval period, people found that spreading quicklime on fields reduced acidity and helped grow crops such as wheat, where they would never grow before. Many lime kilns were built across the coast and countryside of Britain to make the product. Archaeologist Dr. Julian Whitewright from the Royal Commission of Wales has been researching how quicklime was made here in Solva.
I'm intrigued by this transformative product, but we don't actually have the natural materials here. The limestone is not from here.
No, there's no limestone in this part of the county. The limestone comes from the far corner of Pembrokeshire, and then it was sailed around the coast to Solva. It's just got this beautiful natural harbour. So unlike all of the other little creeks and inlets around the county where you can find individual lime kilns, here you've got the ability to bring in bigger ships with bigger loads of limestone. You've got more space to actually build a bigger complex. And then you've got capacity for shipping to actually export produce as well.
Solva has 4 lime kilns in the harbour. They're among the best preserved in Pembrokeshire and they're legally protected monuments.
Oh, wow. This gives a great impression of, well, the quantities of material that were going into these kilns.
Yeah, you get a real sense of the scale of it and also the process of bringing your limestone rocks up off the beach and carting them up here and tipping them in along with the coal and the heat that must have been coming up from here.
Once loaded, the kilns were lit from the base and fired to temperatures above 900 degrees centigrade.
So yeah, you've got layers of limestone and coal all the way up to the top, and that goes through that burning process, and then you can rake the lime out of the bottom.
Several men would work on one lime kiln at a time. It was a dangerous occupation.
These are called the drawing hole or the kiln eye. The purpose of this was to pull air into the base of the fire, so that would have been stuffed with firewood. Not a very nice job, because if any of that sort of spat out and landed on you, you'd get a really terrible blister on your skin. So apparently the lime burners used to smear their sort of exposed skin in butter.
Oh, really?
That, and then you've got all of this sort
So
of...
it's nicely cooked when it does
cooked,
happen.
absolutely.
A nice flavour.
Well basted.
Oh,
Yeah.
dear.
You can crawl in if you feel brave.
Yes. And I can imagine the tremendous heat that would have been generated here. I mean, it's not just a little fire. You're not burning paper here, are you? I mean, trying to burn rock and reduce it down into a powder. And then, I suppose if there's a problem, you know, the person's in here, you've got a rake, you've got to keep the airflow going. And then when the material's ready to rake out, you've got to come in and rake it out.
It's all done on intuition. There's no instrumentation and probes and thermometers and things like that. It must have been disgusting at times with all of the sort of the fumes and the smoke coming out. Being down here when there's a bit of a westerly blowing or southwesterly, yeah, the village would be
Blanketed
well, maybe,
in
yeah.
sulphurous, coaly, limey dust and smoke.
Potentially.
They must have really wanted and valued this material to go to all this effort. Loading these kilns, operating these kilns was a hard business. It could also be highly dangerous. And there's a newspaper report here from 1833, and it says, about 11 o'clock on Wednesday last, a most awful death befell William Powell, a workman at the Brecon British Lime Company's lime kilns. He was taking position to sift the lime into the kiln, and he unfortunately came over a hollow part and the bar gave way as he placed his weight altogether upon it. So he was raking material in the top of the kiln, it sounds like, and put a bit of weight on the bar there, but then there was a void and he fell in. And it says he fell into the middle of the burning chasm. The wretched man was not more than 2 minutes in the fire before he was literally consumed. A coroner's inquest was held. Verdict, accidental death.
Solva's lime kilns would prove vital to the village's fortunes. By the early 1800s, the Industrial Revolution meant that many people flocked to the towns and cities to work in the new factories. The countryside and coast had to send grain to feed them.
Solva had everything in place, a good natural harbour, established trade routes to bring in the limestone, kilns that were up and running, surrounded by farmland that was enriched by the quicklime. This small, quiet village was about to become a hive of activity.
Josh Phillips is a local businessman who's looked into the boom in the grain trade here in Solva.
It's a lovely spot, isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful. Mid-1700s, Solva really started to establish itself as a trading port when a company was established in the village, and they started shipping on a serious scale. There was lots of different things being traded in the village, mainly corn. You know, it's noted that by the late 1800s, a steamer used to visit Solva on a fortnightly basis from Bristol. You know, that's a real busy place to be.
Solva became a key port in West Wales with 30 vessels registered here, and they varied in size from 20 to 200 tons.
It always had a good reputation as a safe harbour. You know, if you were stuck out in stormy seas, you wanted to get yourself to Solva. You could see as well in the lower village the construction of several warehouses. You know, imagine strolling out of the pub of an evening to a smoggy lower Solva with the hustle and bustle of carts going to warehouses, the smell of lime being burnt in the lime kilns. It would have been a very interesting place to be.
And who were the movers and shakers here?
So notably, you've got people like John Williams, local landed gentry. You can still see on the main street next to Tanerath, which was John Williams's house, the granary store that was built right next to his property. Must have been quite a statement to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. Yeah, amazing.
John Williams became one of the most successful shipping magnates here in Solva in the 1800s.
That furthest island is Green Scar, and the one in the middle is Black Scar.
It's beautiful.
David Shorrock is his great-great-grandson.
So John became an important person in the village.
Very much so. And he was an entrepreneur who needed to employ people for his own success. And he farmed a lot and then moved into shipping, and I gather had something in the order of 11 different ships, shipping corn and other items from here to Bristol. So he was a pretty ingenious person, I'd have to say.
Yeah. I mean, it strikes me as very rooted in the place, and it wasn't just about using this place for a quick buck and then going off somewhere, you know.
No. He had a reputation of being very kind to people. He was embedded in the place. They were a very Christian family, so it was more than just making money. And they would very much support the local community, particularly the poorest part of it.
As one of the village's leading businessmen, John also acquired land beyond the farms he owned.
The biggest physical contribution that the family made was actually donating the Gribbin to the National Trust.
The Gribbin is a long stretch of headland popular with walkers.
So it's this peninsula used to be part of the Williams land,
yes.
And they gave it for the good of the nation and visitors to enjoy the area.
Yes, and it now is part of the National Trust's path, and that will never go away, and it will always be there for tourists to climb and see the wonderful views that we can see today.
The Williams family were also instrumental in the modernisation of Solva's roads. This improved infrastructure wasn't the only new building in the village. As the demand for grain grew in the 1800s, more lime was needed for the soil, which meant the villagers needed to build more kilns. And they used any available space.
Here we go, a familiar circular structure. It's another lime kiln, and it's ivy-clad here. I can see.
Kasaki kono kisiki alitamato sapuso zanaika debukeri sanokawa sota sita shukro sasono usiganiki kusemakawa buko basota papu papuka ome wa suna ka koru ga Susoki kebe nimika mo Gojuko kero na kanira su Doko kaka Detu na kate suda Kara tokido Wahana si ayoka Meko suna korita Wako mida siteru A isikana Asinatina mosikite ikirasuko saiki nama kotoreta karemosina nani yamitakata kanayu no kaka detu sunaga dastu siwani no masra dosikabra asine musinaga busu.
There's the outlets and inlets there at the bottom, and it looks though it's mirrored by another structure here, but that looks more modern. Whether it's a facsimile or whether it's been entirely rebuilt, I don't know. Perhaps a pair of kilns, perhaps just one. I'll go and take a closer look.
This kiln is in the garden of villager Paul Tracy, but he's not burning lime in it.
This is a bit cheeky of me. I've just marched into your garden here because I couldn't help noticing the remains of the lime kiln here. It looks nicely preserved, but it's got a pond in the top of it.
And some fish.
And fish as well. But it's also kind of ironic because this was about heat. This was about heating things up to huge temperatures.
And that's an old lime kiln as well.
Oh, it is? So there were actually a pair of kilns here.
There was at least 10 in the village, and that created like a smog, a bit like the mist that's rolling in at the moment.
So a polluted place, really,
Yes.
in many ways,
Yeah. There was people living in Lower Solva when you had a sulphuric cloud or smog over the village.
There's a lovely sea breeze and mist rolling in today, but back in the day that would have been like an industrial smog and a smelly smog as well.
A breeze you'd have welcomed to
Yeah.
get rid of a lot of it, yes.
Yeah.
By the mid-1800s, the village industry was thriving, so houses were built up the hill, helping to escape the polluted air. And it's here in Upper Solva that there's another clue to an expanding population.
I'm just trying to get a picture of when this place was thriving, when it was booming. And we've got the Memorial Hall here, 1922, but this is actually an earlier building, and it started life as a chapel. And here's another chapel, Baptist Chapel, 1863, and it looks like it's been converted into a house now. Oh, look at this, Chapel Lane. I wonder what I'm going to find down the bottom of this lane. Actually, this isn't quite what I expected. It looks like a barn. These three doors look original, though. It's harking back to that early era of nonconformist worship where very often people's houses or barns would be used as a chapel. And back in the late 18th, 19th century, the nonconformist churches, the Anglican Church, were trying to win hearts and minds. There was an expanding congregation here, clearly, but also an expanding population. And this is the parish church of Solva, but it's a late building. It's Victorian in date. The original medieval parish church is up the road at Whitchurch. Solva was not a big enough place in medieval times to have its own parish and its own church. That's quite telling. Only in the 19th century was it big enough to get its parish church.
By the mid-1800s, Solva had 6 chapels, 9 warehouses, a population of over 1,000 people and a large fleet of ships. So protecting these trading vessels was vital.
I'm exploring the harbour here, and these pieces of stone have intrigued me. It's not local stone. This looks like a granite. And this one in particular has a very intriguing shape. Making a joint like this, a dovetail joint, that's a lot of effort to do something like that. It's the sort of thing you get in harbour construction, somewhere that's going to get battered by the sea. And here, some huge cast iron pillars as well. And it's something to do with this harbour, it's something to do with the sea, it's something to do with a big construction. But what?
Bridget Box is a local historian.
Couldn't help noticing association of lighthouse keepers. So have I just seen pieces of lighthouse around there?
You have, yes. That comes from the Smalls Lighthouse. The Smalls is a group of rocks just about 20 miles off the coast here. Very dangerous rocks, mostly submerged, even at low tide. So it was decided that a lighthouse needed to be fitted on there.
OK.
And the first lighthouse that was put out there was a wooden structure on big, long legs. It would be quite sturdy. And it was quite sturdy. It was there for 80 years. But it was made of wood, it was never going to last forever. So it was decided that a new one needed to be built. So it was going to be built of stone, specifically granite. So granite was brought from Bodmin in Cornwall. The stones that you've seen probably were rejects, where somebody hit it the wrong place with a hammer, something, and a bit fell off instead. And then it would have been taken over to the Smalls and built on there.
And I've heard that what happened out there actually changed the way that lighthouses were managed.
That's right, yes. 2 lighthouse keepers were out there, and it was well known that they didn't get on very well. Thomas Griffith and Thomas Howell. Unfortunately, Thomas Griffith died of a freak accident. Thomas Howell thought he was going to be prosecuted for murder, so he thought, I need to keep the body here, otherwise nobody would have just set it adrift. So he made a makeshift coffin and put the body in it and hung it outside, hoping that a passing ship would come along and rescue him. Eventually, the relief did come and got him, but he was unrecognisable. He was a gibbering wreck.
And this macabre sight of his comrade waving and clattering, this decaying body against the side of his living quarters.
Yes, it would have been really awful. It's no wonder that he went mad. So it was after that then that the regulations were changed and all lighthouses had to have 3 keepers.
But it's lovely that there's some remnants here on the
Yes.
harbour, just to remind everyone what went on back out there at sea to make this place function.
The Smalls Lighthouse would have been very important to Solva. And I'm sure they're quite proud of it.
In 1834, Samuel Lewis reported in his Topographical Dictionary of Wales that Solva, one of the poorest hamlets in this part of the Principality, has, within the last 40 years, risen into a flourishing little town. And right across Britain, you can see lime kilns like these, or remnants of lime kilns. And they serve as a reminder that in the 18th and 19th centuries, agriculture, food production had to innovate to feed a growing population. By the 20th century, quicklime, the type produced in kilns like these, was replaced by fine milled lime, and that was transported by rail. Well, today people come to Solva to appreciate the beauty of the place, this wonderful little harbour, and its industrial heritage has become a big part of that attraction.